high school student Hiroto Takasaki passionately dreamed of becoming a doctor. One day, returning home, he was confronted by an unexpected sight. A girl lying unconscious sprawled out in front of his apartment door. Living alone and rarely sharing his reasons with anyone, Hiroto immediately acted on instinct. He quickly knelt beside the girl, his mind racing with possibilities. How did she get here? And what should he do next? His desire to save people had always been his greatest motivation. It was also why he studied so hard, even wearing a white lab coat to stay focused. Now, the sight of the girl lying motionless on the floor made Hiroto think of a burglary. But something didn't add up. The girl's clothes looked strange, like something a foreigner would wear. Although he didn't know where the girl came from or why she was here, Hiroto knew he couldn't just ignore her. Before him was a life that needed saving. Hiroto knew he had to act immediately. Seeing the girl unconscious on the floor, he carefully lifted her and carried her to the bedroom. The cold floor wasn't a safe place for her to lie for long. It could be bad for her health. As he walked, the girl's body stirred slightly. Her eyes slowly opened, her blurry vision gradually clearing. Realizing she was being carried in a boy's arms, she was instantly stunned. The shock quickly turned into panic. Overcome by panic, the girl clung tightly to Hiroto, holding on as if she were afraid of falling. Surprised by her reaction, Hiroto froze for a moment, unsure of what to do. He tried to stay calm and gently soothe her. Gradually, their breathing stabilized. Their eyes met for a brief moment. A wave of embarrassment washed over her, and she quickly let go of him and backed away. Looking flustered, she hurried into the bedroom, avoiding Hiroto's gaze. Hiroto watched her with a mix of curiosity and concern. His mind was filled with questions about who she was and why she had appeared in his apartment. Although she tried to communicate with hand gestures, they couldn't seem to understand each other. Hiroto's gaze fell upon the strange collar around the girl's neck. Its unusual shape and design made him think of something out of the ordinary. A bold thought flashed through his mind. Could she be a slave? Disbelief flooded his thoughts. Unable to hold back, he asked the girl directly, and to his even greater surprise, she gave a slight nod to confirm it. Astonishment was written all over Hiroto's face. This is Japan, not some fantasy world. He tried to stay calm, leaving the room and heading for the kitchen. The sound of his light footsteps echoed as his mind raced with unanswered questions. Hiroto tried to convince himself it was all just a joke. But just then, the gas stove in the kitchen suddenly malfunctioned. A problem that had been happening quite often lately. As he was struggling to fix it, the girl suddenly appeared behind him. What shocked him even more was that she seemed completely unaffected by the flames or the rising smoke. Hiroto's amazement didn't end there. Before his very eyes, the girl held out her hand, and a flame appeared right in her palm. This absurd sight threw Hiroto's mind into chaos. He couldn't stop wondering if she came from another world. Everything was far beyond what he had ever considered reality. While Hiroto was still lost in thought, a familiar sound broke the silence. The girl's stomach rumbled with hunger. Hiroto paused for a moment, then quickly heated up some food and placed it in front of her. Even though he had tried to get her to eat, she still didn't touch the food. He looked at her, puzzled, an indescribable feeling welling up inside him. Worried that she might not like the food, Hiroto decided to eat it himself. But contrary to what he thought, the girl insisted on feeding him herself. Her insistence flustered Hiroto. Although he tried to refuse, she quickly scooped up a spoonful of food and brought it to his mouth. Hiroto reluctantly swallowed the food, then gently reminded her that she didn't need to act like a slave. He reassured her that she wasn't a slave and encouraged her to eat for herself. At his words, a look of relief washed over the girl's face, followed by a faint smile. But instead of eating for herself, she continued to feed Hiroto, looking strangely happy as she did. Seeing her simple joy, Hiroto sighed, but this time he didn't stop her. He brought her a glass of water, placed it in front of her, and encouraged her to eat on her own. It seemed she was finally listening. She began to eat, slowly savoring the flavor of the food, her eyes shining with simple joy. Hiroto felt relieved, but also immensely curious. The girl's genuine reaction moved him slightly. As he thought about the situation, he realized that cold fried rice wasn't the best meal for her. Wanting to take better care of her, he decided to cook some porridge, something easier to eat and much healthier. When he returned to the table, Hiroto was surprised to see the girl licking the plate clean, every motion clearly showing how much she treasured every single bite. Although a look of embarrassment flashed across her face, her actions said it all. Hiroto understood then that she had probably been starving for a very long time. This made him even more worried. These thoughts stayed with him on the way home. He couldn't stop thinking about the girl's situation. Her thin body, the way she ate so hastily, and her timid eyes all pointed to one thing. She'd been suffering from neglect and abuse for a long, long time. Hiroto didn't just want to improve the girl's nutrition. He was also concerned about taking care of her personal hygiene. Her tattered clothes stained with mud and the bruises clearly visible on her delicate skin were things he couldn't just ignore. Determined to improve her condition, he figured a good bath was necessary. When Hiroto brought up the idea, the girl's eyes widened in surprise. Her initial shock quickly gave way to a radiant smile. That innocent expression flustered Hiroto a little. He vaguely remembered reading somewhere that girls often enjoy baths as a way to relax, which put him at ease for a moment. However, the situation quickly became more awkward than he'd imagined. Hiroto realized he hadn't considered a crucial detail. Where the girl would get changed after her bath, a sense of unease crept in as he suggested she should probably get changed inside the bathroom. But the girl misunderstood him. She started to unbutton his white shirt, leaving Hiroto stunned, his face flushed hot, his heart pounding. Flustered and panicked, Hiroto quickly pulled his jacket closed, avoiding her gaze. The air in the room instantly filled with awkwardness, silencing them both. Hiroto didn't want the girl to look like a slave, but the situation was rapidly becoming more uncomfortable. She continued to undress right in front of him, completely unconcerned, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. The overwhelming awkwardness sent Hiroto into a panic. Not knowing what else to do, he rushed out of the bathroom, closing the door to give her some much-needed privacy. Standing outside the door, Hiroto tried to calm himself. He worried whether she even knew how to wash herself. With that thought, he called out from the other side, trying to guide her on how to use the bathroom. But before he could finish, a piercing scream echoed from inside. The sudden, terrified shriek made Hiroto jump. He realized she had turned on the shower. Water was pouring down from above, perhaps for the first time she'd ever seen such a thing. From the sounds, Hiroto could picture her scrambling away from the stream of water, treating it like some terrifying monster. At that moment, the obvious truth hit him. She had never encountered modern plumbing before. The thought left him both astonished and sighing with helplessness. Hiroto realized the girl couldn't manage on her own. As much as he didn't want to, he had to find a way to help her. With some hesitation, he grabbed a piece of cloth and tied it firmly around his eyes as a blindfold. Taking a deep breath, he stepped into the bathroom, trying to convince himself that this was no different from a medical procedure. Starting with her hair, Hiroto carefully massaged her tangled locks with slow, gentle movements. He paid close attention for any sign of pain and reminded her to speak up if anything felt uncomfortable. Under his careful hands, her hair gradually became soft and smooth. The girl seemed delighted, lightly running a hand through her hair, her eyes gleaming with surprise and joy. Meanwhile, Hiroto struggled to keep his composure. He knew this situation was far from anything normal he had ever experienced. But the real challenge was not over yet. After washing her hair, the next step was to clean her body. Hiroto braced himself for what was to come. He wondered what on earth he was going to do with this girl. The thought of taking her to the police station crossed his mind, but he questioned if that was the right choice. Keeping her in his apartment forever was impossible. He couldn't stop wondering what she was thinking, or if she even understood her current situation. The strange thing was, she seemed to be drawn to him in some inexplicable way. Hiroto noticed her gaze often following him, but he couldn't decipher its meaning. The feeling was both uncomfortable and elusive. Even so, he tried to focus on his most important goal, getting into medical school. That dream had always been his top priority. And he knew that as a minor, having a mysterious girl living with him would only complicate things. These thoughts swirled in his mind as Hiroto was about to leave the bathroom. But just as he turned, something unexpected happened. The mischievous girl snatched the blindfold from his eyes. Hiroto opened his eyes and saw the girl standing before him, completely naked. Flustered and surprised, he stumbled back a few steps, his heart pounding, unsure what to do. She stepped forward and gently tugged on his white coat, as if signaling that it was now his turn to bathe. Hiroto's heart rate spiked. He stopped her, trying to get the situation under control. The girl looked annoyed, her eyes filled with disappointment. It was then that Hiroto noticed the bruises and wounds scattered across her body. They were more visible under the light, marks he hadn't seen before, hidden by her dirty clothes. The instincts of someone who dreamed of being a doctor kicked in. He immediately changed his approach. Hiroto knelt down, examining each wound carefully without a word. He began to clean the scrapes, wipe away the dried blood, and then carefully bandage the necessary areas. The girl sat still, watching him quietly. There was no resistance, no complaints. In the silence, any awkwardness between them vanished. Now, Hiroto was focused on only one thing: treating her wounds. Her expression softened as Hiroto tended to her with gentleness and care. In her eyes, a memory seemed to flash, perhaps of the past. An image of a small village surfaced, where she was sold into slavery to a man with a kind smile. That man helped her sit down on a small chair. Though her body flinched slightly at his touch, she didn't resist. Both surprised and moved, she recognized a gentleness she'd never experienced before. Kindness was foreign to her. It was here that she first learned about the concept of magic. As the man gently placed his hand on her head, she looked down at her collar. Her eyes were wary, as if expecting the collar to tighten and restrain her. But there were no chains. No shackles bound her anymore. Tears welled up in the corners of her eyes. For the first time, she felt a sense of freedom, a feeling she never thought she would have. After her wounds were treated, the girl looked visibly relieved. Hiroto handed her a towel and a set of clean clothes he had prepared, signaling for her to get changed. However, she shook her head, refusing. She didn't want to wear new clothes. Hiroto insisted, explaining that providing her with clean attire was just a simple act of kindness. But she still stubbornly resisted, as if clinging to her old identity, that of a slave. Her voice was firm and resolute, showing an unyielding determination. Hiroto told her to stop behaving like a slave and start living like a normal girl. Those words stunned her, leaving her unsure how to react. Until now, slave was all that defined her. In her world, it was an undeniable status. But in Japan, there were no slaves, and Hiroto was determined to change her way of thinking. The atmosphere grew tense for a moment. Finally, she reluctantly took the clothes from his hand, her eyes filled with unwillingness. She dressed angrily, her movements stiff, as if in defiance rather than acceptance. The act wasn't one of agreement, but merely a concession. That night, they both slept in the same room. Hiroto was on the bed while she lay on the floor. He deliberately kept his distance, ensuring she had her own space. Lying in bed, Hiroto stared at the ceiling. He wondered how long it would take for her to adapt. She still resisted the idea of being a normal girl, clearly still clinging to her former identity, but Hiroto was determined to change that, little by little if necessary. Late at night, the sound of a window opening echoed. Hiroto rubbed his eyes, sat up, and went to check. Before him, the girl was standing on the balcony. He froze, completely unable to believe what he was seeing. She was relieving herself in the potted plants, mistaking them for a toilet. Hiroto sighed, realizing that their cross-cultural life together had only just begun. Another normal morning arrived, and Hiroto woke up feeling more refreshed. Hiroto rubbed his eyes and stretched, only to find that the girl was already awake. She stood before him, holding a towel, and offered it to him with a smile. Hiroto refused. and repeated that he had told her to stop with the slave-like actions. He walked towards the bathroom, adding that he could manage on his own. As he washed his face, Hiroto mulled over a recurring problem: what he should call her. She didn't speak his language, and so far, he had no name to call her by. The lack of a name was starting to cause problems. Behind him, the girl still stood silently, holding another towel, ready to hand it to him even though he already had one. A slave with no name, Hiroto thought, considering the situation. After he finished washing his face, they both moved to the kitchen. Hiroto sat down at the table, writing something on a piece of paper. Suddenly, he realized he'd forgotten to explain her tasks for the day. The girl looked eager and excited, thinking she was about to be given a job, but Hiroto didn't need that kind of enthusiasm for what he had in mind. He told her the task wasn't important, then handed her a small stack of children's books. They were basic ones, for learning to read and count. Hiroto told her that her mission for the day was to study, starting with the hiragana chart. The most important thing right now was for her to learn the language. The girl did not look pleased. Her eyes were fixed on the books, clearly unimpressed. To her, this wasn't a real job. It was a far cry from what she had expected when Hiroto said she would have a mission. Her eyes narrowed, expressing her disapproval. She pointed towards the kitchen and the mess around the apartment, implying that she wanted to do chores instead of studying. Hiroto sighed, finally giving in. He reluctantly agreed to let her clean up. As Hiroto relented, the girl's face lit up with happiness. She immediately got to work. Watching her joyfully tackle the task, Hiroto couldn't help but smile. After all, it made sense to share the housework since they were living together. But what happened next left Hiroto stunned. The girl raised her hand and used her magic, making everything in the room float in the air. Books, socks, and papers all drifted around her. Under her control, everything was neatly sorted into its proper place. Hiroto's jaw dropped, unable to believe what he was seeing. He rushed towards her, astonished, demanding that she stop using magic. He insisted that she should clean up the normal way. Hiroto urgently explained that if she used magic like that in public, it could cause serious trouble. The girl looked confused, not fully understanding what he meant. Hiroto patiently began to show her how to use the household appliances, one by one. He demonstrated how to operate each item, from the vacuum cleaner to the microwave. She watched intently, her eyes wide with curiosity. He stressed that, in this world, people use technology for everything, so there's no need for magic. The girl nodded silently, but her eyes showed she didn't entirely agree. To her, doing things without magic seemed strange, even inefficient. Just as Hiroto finished speaking, she suddenly grabbed his shirt. Her eyes welled up with tears, filled with an uncontrollable emotion. The girl began to sob, clinging to Hiroto as if she had just lost something precious. Hiroto stood frozen, his body stiffening in surprise at this sudden emotional outburst. Through her sobs, he realized the reason. She felt useless for not being able to use magic, as if her entire worth revolved around it. Hiroto gently patted her back, trying to reassure her that it wasn't true. He told her she was worth more than just her magic. Just then, a brush fell to the floor, breaking the silence. Hiroto spoke softly, calling her Berna, having decided to give her a name. The girl blinked, tears still clinging to her lashes, and looked up at him in confusion. He explained that the name Berna was inspired by the German word Narb, which means scar. But he chose the reverse of that meaning, hoping she would heal faster. Her tears gradually stopped falling. She looked at him, her gaze a mix of surprise and gratitude. Berna. She repeated the name in her mind, her eyes falling on the brush on the floor. She picked it up, holding it awkwardly in her hand, as if sensing something new. Hiroto chuckled softly as he saw Berna trying to write something, gently correcting her, and told her she was writing backward. Their strange but sincere cultural exchange continued. As Berna prepared to change her clothes, Hiroto watched quietly, still at a loss as to how to explain many modern concepts. He noticed the curiosity in her eyes flare up whenever she encountered something new. just like how she was now intently examining the bottle of dish soap. She always reacted this way when washing dishes, staring at the soap as if it were a mysterious treasure. This scene made Hiroto realize she still had so much to learn, even the simplest things. After she finished the dishes, Hiroto realized there was a more pressing issue to address: her clothes. She was still wearing the tattered outfit from before, and it was time she had some proper clothes for daily life. As he watched, she struggled with the faucet. She turned it on too forcefully, causing water to splash all over the sink. Hiroto looked at her with concern, asking if she was okay. Berna nodded, but it was clear she was still trying to understand how everything worked. First things first, Hiroto decided they needed to buy her some clothes. The two of them started looking for underwear online. Berna, unfamiliar with these items, stared at the array of bras, blankly pointing at one after another in confusion. Hiroto awkwardly explained that she needed to choose one that fit her. However, Berna just gestured with her finger, still unsure which one to pick. Finally, they selected a few items. As they were about to make the purchase, the option to select a size appeared on the screen, making them both pause. Hiroto froze, not having anticipated this detail. His mind reeled as he wondered how he was supposed to take those measurements. After a quick search, he learned that he needed to measure her top bust and her under bust, but the thought of having to measure Berna directly made him break out in a sweat. Could he really go through with it? This is a task someone else would be better suited for, but there's no one else around. Sighing, Hiroto realized he had no choice but to do it himself. Meanwhile, Berna found a yo-yo on a nearby shelf and became engrossed in playing with it, completely distracted. Hiroto called her back and, despite his awkwardness, began to take her measurements. Hiroto started with her underbust, trying to remain calm as he worked. Beads of sweat formed on his forehead, his concentration wavering as he tried to make the process feel professional. He told himself it was just like practicing to be a doctor, nothing more than a practical exercise. But when he moved on to her bust, the situation became much more awkward. His hands trembled slightly, hovering in the air, hesitant to continue. Hiroto's face flushed, and he gritted his teeth until the task was finished. Once it was done, he quickly backed away, his face a mixture of embarrassment and exhaustion. They both stood in silence, an awkward atmosphere slowly settling over them. Hiroto hurriedly completed the order. The next day, the clothes were delivered. He opened the box and handed them to Berna, telling her to try them on. Berna's eyes widened in surprise as she held them up, a look of confusion on her face. She stared at the clothes, her voice filled with astonishment, asking if they were really for her. She had thought they were for someone else. Hiroto sighed, a wave of exhaustion washing over him. He confirmed they were hers, even though it seemed like Berna was teasing him. Hiroto just didn't have the energy to argue. He told Berna that these were her clothes now and she should cherish them. He reminded her that she wasn't a slave anymore, and wearing them would make her look like a normal girl. He offered her the new clothes as a gift, hoping she would accept them. Berna hesitated for a moment, making Hiroto wonder if he had said something wrong. She didn't seem happy with the new dress, which made her reaction all the more confusing to him. Looking closer, Hiroto noticed she was sweating profusely. Quickly, he went to get her a towel, but when he returned, he froze, horrified to see Berna using her own panties to wipe away her sweat. Hiroto's eyes widened in horror. He exclaimed that those weren't a towel, completely stunned by her actions. Flustered, he tried to explain the concept of underwear to Berna, realizing just how much she still didn't understand about modern life. "That's not how you use them," he mumbled, completely baffled. In his mind, he wondered how long it would take for her to understand basic, everyday items. They had a long road ahead of them. A sense of guilt washed over Hiroto as he watched Berna struggle to clean the kitchen. She was still fumbling around, trying to get the job done with the limited knowledge she had. Hiroto hadn't realized how messy the room had become, nor the difference in how they both cleaned. Though Berna tried her best, she was bound by his strict rule, no using magic. As she moved around the room, determined to help, Her foot accidentally got caught on a power cord on the floor. Losing her balance, she tumbled to the ground. Seeing her fall, Hiroto suddenly felt dizzy. Before long, he realized he had caught a cold. Berna, feeling guilty, immediately blamed herself for the accident. But Hiroto reassured her it wasn't her fault. He explained that his health had always been frail. He called it the doctor's paradox, someone who dreamed of being a doctor but couldn't even keep himself healthy. Berna's guilt deepened, and she insisted on taking care of Hiroto so he could get better. At first, Hiroto tried to wave it off, saying it was unnecessary and that he could recover on his own. But Berna's determination was unshakable, forcing him to give in. Hiroto showed her how to make rice porridge, his stomach growling as he waited, anticipating a warm meal to soothe his hunger. When Berna finally brought out the porridge, he froze. The bowl was filled with a burnt mess, with black bits stuck firmly to the sides, emitting a foul, scorched smell. Hiroto stared at the porridge, his expression blank. Not wanting to hurt Berna's feelings, he forced himself to take a bite. "It's good," he lied. But the lie didn't last long. The moment he swallowed, a sharp pain shot through his stomach, causing him to double over in discomfort. Seeing this, Berna immediately tried to use her magic to heal him. But Hiroto stopped her, reminding her again that they couldn't rely on magic for everything. "It's fine," he mumbled, trying to endure the pain. As the chill in his body grew worse, Hiroto asked for a blanket. Berna quickly draped the blanket over him, her eyes filled with worry. Seeing him like this, he thought that maybe he should consider going to the hospital later. For now, though, Hiroto just wanted to sleep. Berna seemed determined to stay close to him. As Hiroto drifted off to sleep, she lay down on the floor beside his bed. In the middle of the night, unable to sleep comfortably, Berna climbed into the bed next to Hiroto. He jolted awake, immediately sensing her presence beside him. Panicked, he yelled, telling her to get out of the bed. "We can't sleep together," he said, fully aware of the situation and feeling too uncomfortable to go back to sleep. But Berna didn't budge. Instead, she lay still, showing no intention of leaving. She placed a cold, damp cloth on Hiroto's forehead, trying to bring his fever down. As the night wore on, she struggled to stay awake. For a moment, she considered using magic to keep herself from falling asleep. But she quickly remembered Hiroto's strict rule: no using magic. Even so, her worry for his health made it impossible for her to sit still. Ignoring his warning, Berna decided to use magic. She pressed her forehead against Hiroto's and transferred the fever from his body to her own, a spell she had perfected to heal others. When Hiroto woke up, his headache had subsided, and his body felt lighter. He looked around and saw Berna sitting at the dining table, her face flushed with fever. A wave of gratitude washed over him as he realized she'd been taking care of him all night. Hiroto walked closer and noticed Berna's face was bright red. His heart sank. She had caught his cold. Putting the pieces together, he quickly realized what she had done. She had transferred his illness into her own body. Hiroto sighed, a sense of frustration rising within him. With his dream of becoming a doctor, this was unacceptable. He gently scolded her, telling her she shouldn't have done that and reminding her to stop using magic for things like this. Berna turned her face away, too weak to argue. Hiroto took her temperature and saw that it was slowly returning to normal. Even though her magic had worked, it still bothered him. It was a dangerous solution she should never repeat. Hiroto knew he had to be more careful from now on, for both their sakes. One evening, Berna was engrossed in a live news report about the Golden Week Festival at the Soji shopping district. There were only 2 days left until the festival ended, and her curiosity grew as she pointed at the screen, making it clear she wanted to understand more about the event. Hiroto glanced at the TV and explained that it was a time when several holidays were grouped together, allowing people to take a break and relax. But Berna was still confused. She gestured with her hands, as if asking if only the evenings counted as rest time. Hiroto chuckled softly and shook his head, explaining that it was the entire day off. He realized that, as a former slave, Berna had probably never experienced the concept of a holiday. A pang of guilt hit him, and he decided this was a good opportunity to show her the outside world and let her get a taste of freedom. Berna kept her eyes glued to the news report, noticing that even during the Golden Week holiday, people were still working. The trains were packed with commuters. The sight made her wonder if those people were slaves too. Hiroto shook his head, dismissing her speculation. Afterward, the two of them went out to explore the largest shopping center in the area. The sheer size and scale of the shopping center left Berna stunned, her eyes wide with amazement. Berna wasn't used to such a bustling environment, where people had to rely on maps to find their way around. She was taken aback by the crowds and the complexity of the space around her. They stopped at a cafe, which fascinated Berna even more. The lively atmosphere and the cheerful chatter of the girls sitting at the surrounding tables captured her attention. Noticing Berna's interest, Hiroto chose a cafe popular with women, hoping she would enjoy the experience. When the waitress approached, she accidentally misunderstood their relationship. With a sweet smile, she said the cafe had special seating for couples. Hiroto's face turned beet red as he quickly waved his hands, stammering that regular seats would be fine. His flustered reaction surprised Berna. They both sat down at a table, but Hiroto could clearly hear the conversation of some girls nearby. Some complimented Berna's beauty, remarking that she must be a foreigner. Others compared Hiroto to her, saying he looked pretty average standing next to her. The pressure of the surrounding stares made him feel ashamed, and he tried his best to ignore them. Hiroto picked up the menu and flipped through it, but when he looked at the one Berna was holding, he froze in horror. Hiroto realized they had been mistakenly given the couple's menu. He hastily snatched it away, blurting out a reaction, but immediately calmed himself and apologized to Berna. He told her to just choose anything she liked. A quiet discomfort grew inside Hiroto. As someone used to burying his nose in books, he wasn't accustomed to social situations like this. The feeling of being watched in public was like a nightmare for him. When the ice cream was brought out, Hiroto encouraged Berna to eat. But instead of eating, she scooped up a spoonful of ice cream and held it out to him, as if offering him the first bite. Hiroto's face flushed as he whispered in a panic, asking Berna what she was doing and reminding her that people were watching. His eyes darted around, noticing other customers whispering about them. He quickly told her not to do things like that in public and insisted that she should eat her own portion. But Berna was stubborn, insisting she wouldn't eat until Hiroto did. She believed it was necessary to check if the food was safe. Hiroto sighed, realizing she wouldn't give in unless he ate first. Reluctantly, he took a bite, trying to ignore the chatter around them. The moment Berna started eating, her face lit up with joy. She thought the ice cream was delicious, a radiant smile spreading across her face. Hiroto breathed a sigh of relief seeing Berna enjoy the ice cream. As they continued their meal, he noticed Berna observing the other people in the cafe. Many customers were using their phones to take pictures of their food, a sight that caught her attention. But then Berna looked down at her own empty hands. She didn't have a phone. For a moment, the radiant look on her face vanished. Hiroto noticed the sudden change, but didn't understand the reason. Suddenly, tears started to well up in Berna's eyes, causing the whispers around them to grow louder. People started to speculate that they had just had a fight. Hiroto was mortified, his face burning from the pressure. Panicked, he gently placed a hand on Berna's head, trying to comfort her. He told her gently that it was okay, and reminded her that they came here to have fun, not to be sad. Hiroto hoped his words would soothe Berna's sadness. Inwardly, he blamed himself, believing he must have done something wrong, though he didn't know exactly what the problem was. At least for now, Berna seemed calmer. But the surrounding chatter didn't stop. Nearby customers whispered to each other, assuming they must be a couple. After seeing Hiroto gently pat Berna's head, some of the girls even sighed in admiration, dreamily calling him a high school heartthrob. Hiroto couldn't believe what he was hearing. He was just a bookworm, not some romantic hero. They quickly finished their food, and Hiroto grabbed Berna's hand, hastily pulling her out of the cafe. His heart was pounding, filled with embarrassment. How could they have looked like a couple in front of all those people? Hiroto had never felt so humiliated. All he wanted was a quiet meal. But now his mind couldn't stop thinking about what his classmates would say if they saw this. As they were leaving, a familiar face appeared in the crowd. One of his classmates had witnessed the entire thing. At that moment, Hiroto just wanted to get home quickly and bury himself in his studies, far away from any trouble. The next day, Hiroto sat at his desk, focused on studying, while Berna stood quietly behind him. It was his last day off, and he was determined not to waste it. But no matter how hard he tried, his mind kept drifting back to yesterday's embarrassment, the scene of being mistaken for a couple at the cafe and the gossip that followed. He sighed, trying to push the memory away and refocus. Just as he was starting to regain his focus, the doorbell rang. Berna moved toward the door, but Hiroto stopped her. He said she didn't have to do that because she wasn't a slave anymore. However, he was completely unaware that the girl standing outside had heard the word slave, and she was stunned. When Hiroto opened the door, the surprised eyes of the person outside were fixed on him. Hiroto opened the door and saw Azumi-san, one of his classmates. She seemed flustered but managed to remain calm. She was holding a small basket and smiled, explaining that her mom had asked her to bring some sweets over since they had extra. Hiroto thanked her, saying it was no trouble since they were neighbors. He glanced at the basket and noticed that the items inside looked delicious. Azumi's attention quickly shifted to Berna, who was standing silently in the background. Her eyes were filled with curiosity and a hint of unease because of what she had just heard. Azumi carefully asked who Berna was. Feeling a bit anxious, Hiroto invited Azumi inside and poured her some tea before answering. He hoped the cup of tea would buy him some time to think of a way to explain Berna's presence. As Azumi sat down, Hiroto weighed his options. He knew Azumi was sharp and had likely overheard the word slave earlier, which made the situation even more complicated. Azumi's expression showed a mix of confusion and concern. Hiroto realized that she was taking the situation more seriously than he had imagined. He could almost see the thoughts racing through her mind. Azumi hesitantly asked again who Berna was, her voice growing sharper, clearly laced with suspicion and wariness. Azumi narrowed her eyes, studying Berna closely, clearly finding the situation hard to believe. She quietly wondered how Hiroto, a bookworm, could be involved with someone like Berna. Accepting that he couldn't avoid it, Hiroto introduced Berna and explained that due to certain circumstances, he was looking after her. But Azumi remained unconvinced. The way Hiroto called Berna by her name without any honorifics immediately made Azumi even more suspicious. She pointed this out bluntly, her voice sharp. Before Hiroto could respond, her gaze hardened. Berna approached with a glass of juice for Azumi, even though Hiroto had insisted he would handle it. Despite this, she took it upon herself to serve the guest. The scene unfolded in an awkward atmosphere, making Hiroto feel secretly embarrassed. Azumi watched the situation, her eyes growing more confused. Suddenly, she blurted out, asking if they were flirting. Hiroto's heart skipped a beat, and he rushed to deny it, stammering that she had misunderstood. But Azumi wasn't convinced. She cut him off, her voice cold, saying he didn't need to show off like that. When Hiroto tried to explain further, she interrupted him again. Her eyes full of suspicion, she asked directly if Berna was really just his roommate. Finally, she gave a knowing smirk. Azumi revealed that she had seen them together yesterday. Hiroto froze, immediately understanding her implication. Azumi narrowed her eyes at him, her gaze sharp, demanding that he clarify their relationship. Backed into a corner, Hiroto felt flustered, unsure how to explain without making things worse. Finally, he mustered his courage and slowly explained. Hiroto admitted that Berna had fed him a parfait, but insisted that it wasn't what Azumi was thinking. He emphasized that Berna did it on her own, not because he asked, and that they simply respected and helped each other. Azumi still looked annoyed. She was silent for a few seconds, processing what she'd just heard. Finally, she stood up, her expression frustrated, and made a cryptic comment. Azumi said that Hiroto didn't need to show off like that. She walked towards the door, intending to leave. Hiroto tried to stop her, telling her to at least finish her tea. Azumi froze, her expression wavering with mixed emotions. She hadn't expected him to be so open about their relationship. Her thoughts were a mess, and her voice choked up slightly. Tears welled up in Azumi's eyes as she bent down to put on her shoes. Even though it wasn't what she had imagined, the feeling of loss still left her speechless, unable to finish her sentence. As Azumi opened the door, Berna followed, her eyes filled with concern. Azumi turned, surprised to see Berna approaching. Without a word, Berna gently wiped the tears from Azumi's cheek. Azumi's eyes widened. Stunned by the gentle and unexpected gesture, Hiroto stood behind them, his eyes full of guilt for letting the situation become so awkward. He tried to explain that it was just Berna's nature. She was always concerned about others and didn't mean anything else by it. Azumi looked at Berna, realizing she'd been selfish for making baseless assumptions. A forced smile slowly appeared on her face. She chuckled softly, mocking herself for her foolish thoughts. Berna and Hiroto stood silently, unsure what to say as Azumi let out a quiet laugh. Azumi reflected, her gaze softening, and she whispered as if to herself that Berna was truly beautiful, even on the inside. After composing herself and drying her eyes, Azumi managed a faint smile. She quietly apologized. Azumi also said that she understood now and promised not to doubt them anymore. She wished them the best before stepping out the door. As she left, a gentle breeze stirred the air. She bent down to pick up a fallen leaf from the ground, softly whispering about a rainbow in the sky. Hiroto watched her leave, suddenly remembering that people often mention rainbows at weddings.